My name is Ruby, and I was born 10 years after Emma and 12 years after my oldest sister, Sarah, making me an obvious afterthought. They were well into adolescence by the time I was developing my first clear recollections, and they were more interested in males and makeup than playing with their younger sister. My parents' pleasure in their elder daughters reverberated throughout our suburban Minnesota home. Sarah would shine during supper after receiving straight as once more. They would declare to anyone who would listen that Emma had joined the cheerleading squad. I would feel like a shadow in my own house as I sat there shoving peas around my plate. I recall the day Sarah, at 16, brought home her first boyfriend. When I was 4 years old, I watched uneasily between the banister rails as our dad shook hands with this tall, spiky-haired boy. Emma started dating at the age of 15, not far behind. They were so confident and gorgeous, so everything I wasn't yet. Mom would hardly look at me as she helped Sarah choose prom dresses or talk to Emma about college applications. "Ruby, finish your homework," she would say. Early on, I learned to be independent, to take care of myself, and to avoid the constant focus on my sister's accomplishments. Did you hear? When I was 7 years old, Mom stormed into the kitchen one morning. Sarah got accepted to Northwestern. Pancakes were served after the news, and I remained in my normal place, inconspicuous as ever. 2 years later, Emma departed for college, and all of a sudden I found myself alone in a house that felt too full of their lingering presence and too empty. Trophies, pictures, and memories from their previous lives were maintained in their chambers, which turned into shrines to them. In the meantime, I established my own space, discovered that solitude was comforting, and made an effort to ignore the fact that every conversation somehow brought up my wonderful older sisters. When I was 15, the true turning point occurred. Sarah gave birth to her first kid, a boy called Tyler, when she was married and lived across town. I can vividly picture my parents virtually soaring with happiness at becoming grandparents, and everyone cooing and crying when she brought him home from the hospital. "You'll be such a wonderful aunt," Mom added, giving me a shoulder squeeze. Though I couldn't have predicted it at the time, in retrospect, I see that was the point at which things began to change. I was honestly thrilled to be an aunt at first. While Sarah and Mom talked over coffee, I enjoyed making goofy faces at Tyler since he was so cute. However, that dynamic changed more quickly than I had anticipated. One Saturday morning, it all began with what appeared to be a harmless request. "Ruby, would you mind keeping an eye on Tyler for a few hours?" With her purse already slung over her shoulder, Sarah said, "I really need to do some shopping." She had Tyler in my arms and was on her way to the door before I could even reply. "Thanks, sis. You're the best." That became the new standard. Sarah would arrive at our parents' house every weekend, give Tyler to them, and then vanish for hours. Under the pretense of needing a vacation from parenting, it was always shopping, lunch with friends, or a spa day. One day I told Mom, it's not fair, after Sarah had been gone for 5 hours. "Jenny and I were supposed to meet in the mall today." Mom barely looked up from her magazine. "Family helps family, Ruby. Your sister needs this time to herself. You'll understand when you're a mother." I was 16 when Emma announced she was pregnant. It's a girl. She squealed at the family dinner while everyone celebrated. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Sure enough, when little Sophie arrived, history repeated itself with a vengeance. Now my weekends were a circus of managing 3-year-old Tyler and baby Sophie. Try helping a toddler build block towers while trying to keep a crying infant calm. It's not as fun as it sounds. And homework? Forget about it. Until they were both napping, if they ever napped at the same time. Jason asked me to the movies tonight. I told Dad one Saturday while bouncing Sophie on my hip and watching Tyler color on our coffee table instead of his coloring book. "Well, you should have thought about that before agreeing to watch the kids," he replied. I never agreed. I snapped. Nobody ever asks me. The frustration in my voice made Sophie start crying. "Lower your voice. You're upsetting the baby," Mom scolded from the kitchen. "And stop being selfish. Your sisters need this support." I started spending my free time in the school library, researching colleges. Not just any colleges, ones far away from home. I threw myself into studying, knowing good grades were my ticket out. Every I on my report card was one step closer to freedom. When my acceptance letter from Berkeley arrived, including a partial scholarship, I felt like I could finally breathe. But my family had other plans. The community college here has a great business program. Sarah suggested during what they called a family council, but I called an intervention. "You could live at home and save money and help with the kids," Emma added brightly, as if that was a selling point. I looked around our living room at their expectant faces: Mom, Dad, Sarah, Emma, and Grandma Rose, who'd been unusually quiet throughout the discussion. Actually, Grandma Rose's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "I think Berkeley is perfect for Ruby." Everyone turned to stare at her. "That program is exactly what she needs for her future career. And your grandfather's education fund will help cover what the scholarship doesn't." I could have hugged her right then. The family council ended with my parents and sisters shooting disappointed looks my way. But I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I could see my future clearly, and it didn't involve being everyone's free babysitter. College life was everything I dreamed of and more. My dorm room became my sanctuary, my classmates became real friends, and for the first time in years, my weekends were my own. No crying babies, no sticky finger toddlers, just me and my choices. But you can't completely escape family obligations, especially during the holidays. I tried to visit as little as possible, but Thanksgiving and Christmas were non-negotiable. Mom would call weeks in advance, her voice thick with expectation. "Everyone's asking about you, Ruby." The kids miss their aunt. The first Christmas break after I started college, I walked into absolute chaos. Sarah now had 2 boys, Tyler and his new baby brother, Luke, while Emma had managed to add a boy named Max to her family alongside Sophie. But that wasn't even the half of it. Ruby. Janet called out the moment I walked through the door, immediately staring her twin 5-year-olds in my direction. "The kids have been asking about you." No, they haven't. I thought. They barely know who I am. But before I could protest, Cousin Rachel's 7-year-old daughter attached herself to my leg, followed closely by Cousin Mike's 9-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter. "Ruby, honey," Mom called from the kitchen, barely visible behind a mountain of dishes. "Why don't you take the kids upstairs to your room? I'll bring up some snacks later." And just like that, I was corralling 8 children up the stairs, feeling more like a sheepdog than a college student. My old bedroom became a war zone. Toys everywhere, juice spills on my childhood bedspread, crayon marks mysteriously appearing on the walls. Hours passed. My stomach growled as delicious smells wafted up from downstairs, where the adults were enjoying their peaceful holiday meal. When Mom finally appeared with a plate of kid-friendly snacks, she barely made eye contact. By the time I managed to sneak downstairs at 8 o'clock, after coordinating with various parents to collect their exhausted children, the dining room was empty except for dirty dishes and picked-over serving platters. "Oh, Ruby," Emma said, already putting on her coat. "Max was an angel for you, right? We've got to run. It's past his bedtime." Sarah followed suit, gathering her boys while chatting with Mom about New Year's plans. Janet was helping her twins into their snow boots, while cousins Rachel and Mike were carrying their sleeping children to their cars. Not a single thank you. Not one person asked if I'd eaten. Not even a backward glance as they all filed out, leaving me standing in the wreckage of Christmas dinner. "Ruby, be a dear and help me with these dishes." Mom called from the kitchen as if I hadn't just spent the entire day doing her a massive favor. I looked at the mountain of dirty plates and serving dishes, evidence of a holiday meal I never got to enjoy. The message from Mom arrived during finals week, just as I was finishing my last paper for the semester. My phone buzzed with her usual pre-holiday update, but this one made my blood run cold. "Sarah and Emma are coming with the kids," it read cheerfully. "Plus Janet and her twins, Rachel's girls, Mike's kids, and exciting news. Sarah's sister-in-law Lisa is joining us with her 3. It'll be such a wonderful Christmas with all the little ones." I did the math in my head. 12 kids, 12. I sat there in the library, staring at my phone until the screen went dark, then lit it up again to make sure I read it right. The message stayed the same, but something inside me finally changed. 2 years of college had given me perspective. I'd watched my roommate, Kate, go home for the holidays and return with stories of actual family time, board games, movie nights, proper Christmas dinners. My friend Jessica's biggest complaint about going home was having to share the TV, remote with her siblings. Meanwhile, I'd spent every holiday of my adult life as an unpaid nanny service. I didn't reply to Mom's message. Instead, I packed my bag for Christmas break with an unusual sense of calm. For the first time, I wasn't dreading the holidays because I was going home with a plan. The days leading up to Christmas were deceptively normal. I helped Mom in the kitchen, breathing in the familiar sense of her signature dishes: pot roast, honey-glazed ham, and her famous apple pie. I decorated the Christmas tree, carefully hanging the ornaments side by side with the fancy glass balls Mom reserved for the front of the tree. Christmas Day arrived with a flurry of activity. Cars began pulling into our driveway one after another, each bringing more chaos than the last. Sarah arrived first with her boys, now 5 and 3, followed closely by Emma with Sophie and Max. Lisa, Sarah's sister-in-law, showed up with her 3 kids, all under 7. The rest of the relatives poured in after them, each family adding more children to the growing crowd. I watched from the corner of the living room as the noise level rose steadily. Sarah made her way toward me, her youngest balanced on her hip, while the older one tugged at her sleeve. "Ruby," she called out with that familiar tone, the one that meant she was about to pass off her parental duties. "The boys have been so excited to see you. They can't wait to play with their favorite aunt." She was already nudging them in my direction, the same way she had 100 times before. But this time was different. This time, I stood my ground and looked her straight in the eye. "No," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I'm not watching the kids today. I'm here to enjoy Christmas like everyone else." The room didn't exactly fall silent. There were too many children for that. But I could feel the ripple of shock move through the adults. Sarah's mouth dropped open. Mom froze in the doorway with a plate of cookies. Dad looked up from his newspaper with raised eyebrows. But who's going to watch all the kids? Emma's panicked voice carried across the living room. As I turned toward the stairs, I glanced back just long enough to see Mom's helpless shrug and the bewildered looks on everyone's faces. The sight almost made me laugh. They looked like someone had just told them Christmas was canceled. My feet carried me up the familiar stairs, past the family photos marking my sister's many achievements, and into my childhood bedroom. The soft click of the door closing behind me felt like the period at the end of a very long sentence. I flopped onto my bed, the same twin bed I'd had since middle school, and let out a long breath. Downstairs, I could hear the muffled sounds of chaos. Adult voices rising and falling, children crying, the occasional thump of something being dropped or thrown. Can you believe her? So selfish. The fragments of conversation that filtered up through the floor made me smile. Let them talk. Let them finally face the reality of watching their own children. My phone buzzed with a message from Kate. Did you do it? Did you finally stand up to them? Operation Freedom is in progress, I typed back. Currently hiding in my room while they figure out how to parent their own kids. A knock on my door interrupted my texting. Ruby. Mom's voice was trying for concerned, but landed somewhere between annoyed and desperate. The children are asking for you. I didn't move from my comfortable position on the bed. I'm busy, Mom. Her sigh was audible through the door, followed by the sound of her footsteps retreating down the hallway. I returned to my phone, joining a group chat with my college friends who were providing running commentary on their own family Christmas dramas. Jessica's uncle was drunk again. Mike's grandma was asking when he'd find a nice girl. Kate's brother had brought home a surprise girlfriend. 2 hours passed like this in peaceful rebellion. My phone buzzed constantly with messages of support from friends who'd heard me complain about holiday babysitting duty for years. The chaos downstairs eventually settled into a different rhythm, one that didn't include my participation. When I finally descended the stairs for dinner, you'd have thought I'd risen from the dead, judging by everyone's expressions. Aunt Janet actually dropped her fork. Cousin Rachel's mouth hung open mid-sentence. I scanned the dining room, noting Emma's conspicuous absence. Through the doorway to the living room, I could see her attempting to organize some kind of game with the children, her usually perfect hair coming loose from its elegant updo, a stain of unknown origin on her festive sweater. Taking my seat at the adult table, a first in recent memory, I surveyed the spread before me. Everything was still hot, still fresh, still waiting to be enjoyed. No lukewarm leftovers, no picked-over remnants, no half-eaten children's portions. I could feel the weight of disapproving stares as I filled my plate with Mom's honey-glazed ham, Aunt Janet's sweet potato casserole, and Cousin Rachel's famous green bean dish. The clinking of silverware against plates couldn't quite mask the tension in the room. I was halfway through enjoying my first proper holiday meal in years when Sarah finally snapped. She'd been watching me eat with a kind of intensity usually reserved for nature documentaries about predators and prey. Well, she announced to the table at large, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "Looks like someone's gotten a little too big for their boots at college. Seems they've forgotten all about sisterly duties." I took my time with my spoonful of mashed potatoes, deliberately licking the spoon clean before responding. The food really was excellent when you got to eat it fresh. "Funny thing about sisterly duties," I replied, keeping my voice level and calm. "I don't remember seeing free babysitter in any sisterhood manual. Maybe you could point that chapter out to me right after the part where parents are supposed to watch their own children." The guests around the table would have been comical if they weren't so genuine. Aunt Janet actually clutched her pearls. I hadn't known people really did that outside of movies. Cousin Rachel was suddenly very interested in her green beans, while Uncle Mike seemed to be trying to disappear into his dinner roll. Mom and Dad exchanged that special look they had, the one that meant they were disappointed, but didn't want to cause a scene. Dad's fork was frozen halfway to his mouth, and Mom's smile had gone tight around the edges. But instead of the lecture I expected, Mom cleared her throat and asked Uncle Mike about his new job. The conversation stuttered back to life, though everyone kept shooting glances my way, as if expecting me to sprout a second head. I just kept eating, savoring every bite of food that hadn't been picked over by tiny hands or gone cold while I changed diapers. About 20 minutes into dinner, Emma appeared in the doorway looking like she'd been through a war. Her Christmas sweater was now sporting what looked like juice stains, in addition to the earlier unknown substance, and her hair had completely escaped its elegant upto. "Sarah," she called, her voice carrying a hint of desperation. "Could you?" Sarah shot me one last withering look before pushing back from the table. The sisters exchanged places, with Emma practically collapsing into the vacated chair. She looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep tired I'd been feeling every holiday for years. Emma filled her plate mechanically, but she couldn't seem to resist giving me the stink eye between bites. I met her gaze and shrugged, then went back to enjoying my dinner. After finishing my meal, including 2 servings of Mom's apple pie, a luxury I'd never been able to enjoy before, I quietly excused myself from the table. No one protested. No one asked me to help clean up. No one demanded I take a shift with the kids. Morning light filtered through the living room windows as I came downstairs, still riding the high of my peaceful Christmas evening. That feeling evaporated the moment I saw them. Mom, Dad, Sarah, and Emma sitting in an obvious ambush formation. Sarah didn't waste any time. "What kind of performance was that yesterday?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass, making us look like bad parents in front of everyone. I sank into an armchair, surprisingly calm. "Performance? You mean me wanting to enjoy Christmas like everyone else? I'm just tired of being the unpaid, unappreciated babysitter while everyone else gets to have an actual holiday." "But you never complained before," Mom interjected, her brow furrowed with confusion. I couldn't help but laugh. "Never complained. I've been complaining for years, Mom, but it was just too convenient to ignore me, wasn't it? Too easy to keep exploiting the good little sister who never makes waves." They all started talking at once, their voices overlapping in a chorus of accusations and reminders of sisterly duty and family obligation. Dad kept mentioning how much they'd done for me over the years. Mom brought up how well they'd raised me, and my sisters alternated between guilt trips and outright attacks. I let them run out of steam before speaking again. They're not my children. I said quietly but firmly, I didn't give birth to them. I didn't decide to have them. They're your responsibility, not mine, especially during the holidays when I'm supposed to be relaxing too. That's when Sarah played what she thought was her trump card. She stood up, her face flushed with anger. "Well, maybe it's time someone taught you a lesson about gratitude. Let's see how you manage without Mom and Dad paying your college tuition." The room fell silent. I watched Mom and Dad exchange uncertain glances, clearly caught off guard by this suggestion. But instead of the panic Sarah clearly expected to see on my face, I felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, all the cards were on the table. I stood up slowly. "Actually, Sarah, Grandma's been paying my tuition from Grandpa's education fund. You know, the one he set up for all his granddaughters. The same fund that helped put you through nursing school and Emma through business school. And even if that wasn't the case, I have a partial scholarship. Plus, unlike some people, I'm not afraid of working to support myself." Without waiting for their response, I turned and walked upstairs. It took me less than 10 minutes to pack my bags. I'd gotten good at traveling light over the years. As I came back down, Mom and Dad started calling after me, their voices a mixture of anger and panic. But I was done talking. I walked out the front door, letting it close behind me on their protests and recriminations. The winter air bit at my cheeks as I headed to my car, but I barely felt it. The drive back to campus was oddly peaceful. As the miles between me and home increased, I systematically blocked their numbers. Mom, Dad, Sarah, Emma. Each tap on my phone screen felt like breaking another link in a chain I hadn't even realized was weighing me down. My dorm room welcomed me back with its blessed simplicity. No toys scattered across the floor, no sticky fingerprints on the windows, no constant background noise of children demanding attention. Just my books, my laptop, and my own thoughts. January passed in a blur of new classes and quiet weekends. February brought snow and a blessed lack of family drama. I threw myself into my studies, made plans with friends, and for the first time in years, felt like I was living my own life instead of existing in the margins of everyone else's. Then one cold Saturday morning in late February, I looked out my dorm window and saw them, Mom, Dad, and Emma, standing in the parking lot, looking uncertain and out of place among the students rushing to and from classes. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't home, but something in their body language made me pause. They looked different, smaller somehow, less like authority figures, and more like people who had driven 4 hours to right a wrong. I met them in the lobby. Emma spoke first. "Can we buy you coffee? We'd like to talk." The campus cafe was quiet that morning. We sat at a corner table, steam rising from our cups, the silence heavy with unspoken words. Mom was the first to break it. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her cup. "After you left, well, we had some long conversations as a family, very long conversations." Emma continued, looking me in the eyes. "We were mistaken, Ruby, every one of us. To feel better about taking advantage of you for years, we justified it as family responsibility." Dad cleared his throat. "We were unaware of how unfair it was, or perhaps we didn't want to be aware of it. You were worthy of having your own time and holidays. You should not be treated like the family babysitter, but rather like an adult." I sipped my coffee slowly, allowing their comments to fully register. "What about Sarah?" I inquired. Emma let out a sigh. "She's still processing, Sarah. You are aware of her personality. She finds it difficult to acknowledge her mistakes. We all want to do better, though. Now everything will be different. No more pushing the kids on you," Mom vowed. "No more requiring you to forfeit your vacation time. We don't need you for daycare. We want you to return home because you want to." I looked at their faces, the openness in Emma's posture, the regret on Dad's face, the sincerity in Mom's eyes. "Okay," I finally said. "I believe you." I cleared their numbers that evening after they had departed. Emma texted me in a matter of minutes, saying, "Miss you, little sis, for real this time." A new normal emerged in the months that followed. On some weekends, I went home, and it was really nice. Emma either hired a babysitter or kept an eye on her children when she brought them. Mom gave up attempting to plan family bonding activities that invariably ended with me leading a group of kids. I haven't spoken to Sarah yet. I occasionally come across her social media posts, including images of her boys growing up so quickly. There's a part of me that wishes she will reach out first and understand what she'd done wrong. I'm okay with the distance until then.